Khastqatqa pesia tupisin kusqetlih tupisil qatlach chochone tluin qatlih squest utitlin tlqauchis qatlih shay tluis netziiten uidlem tluis puus yatlwa tlqutlesia qatlu qest qul qatlu qest tzmetl es pqtil shi qestlu shay uyatlwauch nes qutpaq me uch lemti tluqa sinkusqedli. Good. Well, it's evening right now for me, but good day, everyone. My name is Vance Homegun. I'm from Arlene, Montana. My Indian name is Chochonet. That's what the people know me by. I just want to say this is just weird for me. Usually we're in person and we can't do it this way, so now you have to watch a video, and that's not nearly as fun. But I'm gonna do my best, and I hope you guys can take away something from this. Um, I was asked a little bit to share about the importance about our stories as Salish and Kalispel people. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. I had to do another video that was titled Stick Game 101. And if you had to sit through that, I'm so sorry. I teaching stick game over video is another is a whole nother thing on its own. But I hope you got something out of that video if you sat in that video. But I also want to mention another thing, that if you have any questions, or if you have any questions for me or whatever, you can go ahead and email me at vancehomegun@gmail.com. It's just how it sounds, VanceHomegun@gmail.com. Feel free to do that, okay? Um, so I just want to sit here, and I just want to I was thinking about this all week, and writing stuff down, and thinking, how how am I supposed to how am I supposed to share this with you all? And you know, in order for you to understand some things, I'm just going to be candid with you. And like I said, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and just email me, and we'll go from there. Okay? But I want to give a special shout out to our Lee schools. I'm an alumni of that district. And yeah, I don't think any of my teachers from elementary are there no more. But Miss Schneider, I know you're still there. And actually, you're one of the very reasons why I became a teacher. So, Miss Schneider, I love you. And shout out to you. You're the best. And I actually got to tell you a funny story real quick. Um, I don't know if they call them this anymore, but they might not. I don't know. But when we were in school, and if you got in trouble, you got what you called a referral. Now you can get a minor referral, a referral, and a major referral. And then after major referral, I think you got expelled from school for a couple days. Anyway, I was in Miss Schneider's class, and she taught fifth grade. And up into fifth grade, I never had any kind of referral. I was kind of a quiet kid. I didn't say too much. I just mainly stuck with my core group of friends, and that's how I did it. I love to play I love to play sports at recess and whatever. But other than that, I didn't really get. I mean, I wasn't a. If the teacher said, "Let's listen up, we're gonna learn this," I typically just listened. But um, Miss Schneider was a pretty cool teacher, and during the middle of the school year, I had a sister who was just a grade or two below me, and we were outside at recess, and I don't know what came over me. I've never done anything like this ever. This was a one-time thing. But my sister was over there in the football field playing with her friends, and I had a rock in my hand, and it was like, I mean, it wasn't a small rock. It was kind of a big size rock. And honestly, it's so weird. I don't know what came over me, but I decided to throw the rock towards my sister. And my thinking was I would throw it towards her. It wouldn't hit her, but it would look like I was trying to hit her, and I would have got her upset and mad. I wasn't trying to hit her. I just wanted to make it look like I was trying to hit her, right? So dumb, right? But so I decided to throw the rock, and sure enough, I watch it, and it's going straight for my sister's head. And at that point, I'm like, it's gonna hit her head. I said, Audra! And I yell loud as I can, and she turns around like this. Cracks her nose, blood, cut, and she's screaming, and I'm like, all I'm thinking about is I'm dead. My dad's gonna kill me. My mom's gonna kill me. My grandparents are gonna kill. I'm dead. I'm dead. That's just it. I'm dead. And I go inside and I tell Miss Schneider what happened, and she tells me I gotta give you a major referral. So I want to thank you for that major referral, Miss Schneider. It's still on my record. And when they were recruiting me for college, they said, we don't know if we can recruit you because you got a major referral from fifth grade. But thankfully, I talked my way. No, I'm just joking. That didn't happen. But anyway, it was a funny story. Um, so today, with the time that we have, guys, if you have any questions along the way, write them down. Glad to answer them. And I'm just going to share a little bit from my heart, okay? Because the subject that we're talking about is it's a really personal subject for any tribal person, okay? And I'm like I said, I'm going to be candid with you, and and that's all we can do, right? So, in order to understand the stories about our people, um, this is something I begin to realize kind of later on. Um, as you get older, you begin to realize some things as a kid that you were taught. Then when you get older, you realize, hey, those things that I grew up with, they were very important, and which is why I need to make sure that I keep them in there so that I could teach, my kids, or I could teach, you guys or whoever, with a good heart and to be truthful as I can. So, growing up, for me personally, um, I just consider myself very blessed, very, very blessed. I had two amazing parents. My dad actually moved to heaven when I was 18, and I miss him every day. My mom is still here. She's doing great, healthy as a horse. Don't tell her I said that. She's healthy, and actually, I actually lost my grandpa here last month, and he was the last grandparent that I had. So that was pretty hard for my family. He didn't die over COVID. He got sick and he got a stroke and he passed away. But I only tell you this because growing up, um, I had my grandparents with me. I had my grandparents from my dad's side, and I had my grandparents from my mom's side, and I even got to know my some of my great grandparents as well too. And to top it off, my grandparents also had siblings, so I had those folks as well too, who were technically my great aunt and great uncle, but we don't have that in Indian way. We just have auntie or uncle, grandma or grandpa. Um, that's what we have, and parents. So we, when I was growing up, I used to hear them talk about different stuff. I would hear my folks and grandfolks talk about what life was like growing up for them. I also heard them constantly tell us like, "Hey, um, you kids got it so easy nowadays. You kids got TV, you kids got running water, you kids have electricity, and all this and that." And to me, that was just like, I was like, why are you telling me this? Like you're a kid, you don't realize it, and but I was also, but as I got older, I began to realize some of the things they were talking about, and I also even begin to realize s- some of the ways they chose to raise me and my siblings. um like I said, I was very blessed. I'm just blessed because growing up, what family's perfect? My family isn't perfect. I don't know if your family's perfect, but growing up, um, I was able to hear my language spoken in my home. I come from two tribes. I come from Salish and I come from Blackfeet, okay? Half and half. And both sides of my family um, spoke our language very, very well. I heard Salish spoken all the time, and I heard Blackfeet spoken all the time. And I knew they were different as a kid because they sound completely different. I knew they were different, but that's what I knew. I knew if we were going here, I was going to hear Blackfeet. I knew if we were going there, I was going to hear Salish. And because I was born in Browning and lived there till I was about 7 years old, and then we moved up here to Arlene, where I currently still live. I knew that if I was to go to Arlene, I was going to hear Salish. If I was going to be in Browning, I was going to hear Blackfeet. And that's just the way it was. And then I heard my grandfolks talk about medicine people. I heard them talk about songs. I heard them talk about just different things growing up. And as I got a little bit older, it stirred my curiosity, and I began asking questions. And that's when, it was actually in fifth grade, Miss Schneider, if you're watching this, it was actually in fifth grade that I decided that I wanted to be proficient. I wanted to be a fluent speaker in my language. And I said, I can learn my language. I have a lot of people in my family that can speak it. I know plenty of other folks that can speak it, so I want to learn it. This ought to be easy. And I already knew a handful of words by then, just hearing them all my life. I was like, "Oh, I got this. I got this." So I remember going home, running up to my grandma's house because she lived right next door to my house. And I remember running in there. I didn't even go to my house, and my dad had probably had something to eat for me or whatever. I just skipped my house and I ran to my grandma's house and I said, "Grandma," I said, and she was in there. I think she was playing cards. And I said, "Grandma," I said, "Hey, I want to learn how to talk Indian." And she looked at me and she said, "What?" She said, I said, "I want to learn how to talk Indian." I said, "Can you teach me?" And she kind of grinned and she said, "Well, what do you want to know?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "How do you say hello?" And I already knew how to say hello. It's just eh. I always heard that eh. She said, "Eh," and I said, "Eh," and she smiled. And I said, "All right." I said, "I already knew a lot of the basics, so I want to know something a little more, a little more deep." I said, "How do you say I'm hungry?" And she said, "Meh." And I said, and when you're learning a language, you ain't gonna sound perfect at first. And I was like, meh. And she was like, "What are you trying to say?" And I said, "I'm trying to say I'm hungry." She said, "I just told you, meh, say it." And I said, meh. And oh, we were laughing. And and that kind of began the language journey. And then I went to my great grandma's house, which is my grandma's mom, and I told her, I said, "Grandma," I said, "I'm learning how to talk Indian, which means good morning." And she looked at me and she said, "Eh," and I said, "Eh." And we both laughed, and there began. Then when I seen my uncle Joe Cluya, I said, no, no. And he had a real deep voice, and he said, and he was looking at me like, is he just greeting me in Indian, Salish right now? And then I seen my Aunt Sophie. I greeted her, and these are all folks that talk very good Salish in my family. And then as time went on, and I kept on this language journey, I I began to meet I began to meet other elders here on the Flathead Reservation, um, because you have that deep passion to learn, and because there aren't that many people that speak Salish there. Today it's really, we really don't have a lot, but then we had more than we did today, because this would have been 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This would have been 15 years ago when I started this language journey, and there were a lot more fluent speakers, a lot more elders around then. And I the elders at that time, when I was starting to become a teenager, they took me under their wing, and they became all of them became just like grandparents to me. I spent a lot of time with them, and I remember Dorothy Felsman, who was an Arlee resident here, her whole life. Um, I remember I'd go over to Dorothy's house, and she just lived, down by Jocko River down there, and I'd go over to Dorothy's house, and oh, she'd be smoking just like my grandma. They light up, every cigarette after cigarette, and I'd walk in there and I'd walk in that cloud, and I didn't even think 2 cents of it. I was just so happy to be there with her, and I'd sit down and she'd give me a can of Pepsi. And the reason why I spent a lot of time with Dorothy in the beginning was because Dorothy taught the Salish language in the Arlee public school system, and I didn't know that until she began to tell me this. But Dorothy actually knew how to read and write in the IPA, which is the International Phonetic Alphabet. It's the alphabet that we use for our Salish language. And so my thinking was that if I can learn the alphabet and I can learn how to read and write, then I can get more of these materials and study them. And that way it'll just increase my learning and hopefully speed up the process. But I remember sitting with Dorothy, and man, you should this I was like, all right, next. And we'd go over words after words and sentence after sentence. And I still have all those notes with me to this day. They're all filed away. But, um, we just had a lot of fun. And then after I would get done at Dorothy's house, my mom would pick me up, or my grandma would pick me up. And this is what I loved, guys. This is what I loved. When my grandma would pick me up, my grandma would always get out of her car and meet Dorothy halfway on the porch or something, and they would talk in Indian. And like I said, I heard Indian spoke my whole Salish. When I say Indian, that just means the language. I'm trying to get out of the habit, but when I heard Salish spoken, when I was younger, and you don't think nothing of it, but now that I'm so, I don't know, fascinated with it, um, that um, I when I would hear them speak, it just, oh, I could go like this, and they would be speaking, and I was just literally in heaven, and they would laugh, and I just enjoyed it. And then when we would come across another person, sad to say, but a lot of the time where I heard Salish spoken was at wakes. A lot of our elders would get together and Chmit Skretli, or one of them would get up and say something to the people, and it would be, Skretli. That when I say Skretli, that means Indian, you know. And it was just really, really good. Really, really good. So, which brings me to my next point, the stories. Because I had such a desire to learn my language, I didn't know what would come with that. And little did I know I would be hearing lots and lots and lots of stories, because they would tell me stories in our language. They would explain things to me in our language, and I was hearing this all, and yet I was so concentrated on the language that sometimes I might miss the story, sometimes, but I also paid more attention to that story, if anything, as well, if that makes sense. So we want to pass these stories on to our children, guys. And we know stories are probably one of the greatest tools of learning. And as Indian people, oral history is how we pass on who we are. The elders used to always say, the white man, he writes everything down, and you know, and that's how they do it. But we never had a way of writing you know, until just within the last half a century or so, if that. And we never had writing. And to this day, what fluent speakers we have left, they still don't know how to read or write. Some of them do, and some of them are very good at it. But oral history is how we pass things on to the next generation. I want to tell you a quick story, a story that I share with different folks, but it's a story that it just always stood out to me, and I love sharing it. And I'm going to tell it to you in English, but it's a story you could share too, with whoever you want. Um, it's how the Salish people got fire. And Louis Adams actually told this story to me, and I always enjoyed it when he would tell it, and I'd get so excited just because I always enjoyed the story. But the story goes like this: in the beginning, there were no human beings, there was just animals. And then little by little, human beings started to appear. And the more that human beings started to appear, the more they became dominant, and the animals were under them, basically. And but in the beginning, it was just the animals. And slowly by slowly, there was some humans. And anyway, there was a little red bird up in this tall ponderosa pine tree. And he was up there quite a ways, and he was watching down below. There was a small herd of different animals. They were just kind of standing around in a circle, and they were talking. And one of the animals said, it's going to be nighttime soon, and it gets cold, and we can't see anything, and the sun goes down, and we have to wait another 6, 7 hours before it comes back up. And sometimes we want to get work done, but yet we can't do anything because it's cold and there's no light. And wouldn't it be cool if at nighttime there was like a little sun or something that we could see? And this little bird, he just couldn't help but overhear their conversation. So he flew down, and he said, "Hey," he said, "What's going on here?" And they were just saying, "Oh, we was just talking about how it's going to be dark soon, and we can't see anything. It's we just wish we could see at night, and we wish it wasn't so cold." And the little bird, he kind of smirked. He said, "Well," he said, "I'll tell you what." He said, "I've been given a special power from the man who sits on top, Mokhtkin, creator. And he has given me the special power, and he put it in my tail." And he turned around, and he had a little orangish red tail, his tail feathers that were sticking up. He said, "The power is in my tail." He said, "If you can get this, if you can catch me, I'll give you this power, and it will do exactly what you want it to do." And they looked at each other. What? What? So they all dove for the bird. And the bird, as fast as he was, shot straight up. He started flying. And then those folks below were running after him. They were trying to catch him. And pretty soon, one by one, they would give up. They would get tired, and they'd say, finally it was down to just a couple. They'd say, "Little bird, little bird," they say, "there's only two of us left. Won't you give us this special power? We've been chasing you, and we can't get you." And the little bird would land on a branch, and he'd look down at them, and he'd say, "Oh no," he said, "if I give you my power, you'll just be selfish with it, and you'll use it just for yourself. No way will I stop and give it to you." So then he flew. Pretty soon only one left, and this one pleaded with the little bird. little bird, he said, I'm really, really tired. He said, won't you please um, give me this special power? The little bird landed on that branch again and he said, oh no, if I give you this special power, I see right through you. You'll hurt people with it. You'll use it for bad and not for good. I will not give you this power. And he flew off. Pretty soon he was flying, kind of enjoying the nice blue, nice sunny day. And then he seen a teepee over there. Flew over there. He flew on a branch and he looked down and he seen this young girl with this old man. And the old man was really sick. And the girl was sitting on the ground and she had the old man in her lap in her arms and holding him. And he was coughing, and all this was before COVID. But so the little bird just watched, just watching the girl, and the little girl was taking care of him. She would give up. She covered him, and she had berries there and whatever, and just trying to help him get better. Pretty soon, the bird flew down and went up to the young girl and said, "What's wrong?" And back in them times, animals talked. They communicated with humans, and that little girl said, my my grandfather's sick and I think he's dying and I don't know what to do. I've done all that I can do and he ain't getting any better. And I don't think he'll make it through the night. It gets cold and I don't know. And the little bird smiled and he said, I have a special power in my tail feathers. He said, if you take some of my feathers and you throw them on the ground, it's going to create fire. He said, and when you get that fire, when you get that special power, he said, you'll be able to see in the night. You'll be able to stay warm at night, he said, and you'll even be able to cook food, and it'll help bring medicine to your people, and it will help them feel better. She said, so I'm going to give you this special power, and hopefully it'll help you make your grandfather well. And she said, no, no, no. Anyway, end up taking the the feathers, and boom, turned into fire. And that was the story. And when I would get done hearing that story, um, Louis would always say, that's kind of how happiness works in life. He said, you can keep on chasing happiness till you're red in the face. He said, but as long as you chase it, you'll never get it. He said, but if you stop, if you look around and you help people, he said, and you care for people, you love them, happiness will land right by you and let you take it. And that's how it works. And I always enjoyed that story. It always made me feel good and it always made me think, um, and that's true. I found that to be true. So, um, before our time ends here, because it's going to be done before we know it, um, there's a lot of stories with Indian people. Indian people always say, in their stories, they're always laughing. And they say laughter's medicine. And no matter what, an Indian will always add some humor in their story, whether it be at a funeral or at a wedding or they're just visiting you. And I used to sit back and watch my parents tell stories all the time and my grandfolks and the stories they told. I couldn't believe it. Um, my grandpa was a tribal cop, back in the 60s and 70s, and um, he told me this one time. He said his partner. He said they were on a back road. He said, and his partner had I don't. He said his partner. He said it was about evening time. Sun was just going down. He said, and Rainey had to use the bathroom. He had to go number two. He said, can't you? My grandpa told him, can't you hold it? We're almost there. Kenneth, I can't hold it. You're gonna have to pull over. My grandpa, he pulled over, and he said Rainey got out there, and he said he kind of went out in that field right there, and he said he heard Rainey's voice. He said, Kenneth. He said, "You have a newspaper or something in that car?" My grandpa said, I looked around. He said, "I don't have anything." He said, um, "It looks like you'll have to use a rock." And, he said, I guess Rainey said, "Ah." And so I guess Rainey was out there in the dark, trying to find a rock. And then Rainey got back in, and my grandpa said, "Oh, you found a rock that fast?" He said, he said, "I think it dried up. Get me home." uh, I always remember that. Then that one time, my grandma was raised by her grandma and grandpa up in here at Arlie at Dirty Corner, and my grandma said there was this old guy a long time ago they called him Patsy. She said, and he was a comical old man. He was skinny. You always see him walking on the road, and he wear his big tall hat. He had braids, and just a comical guy, always making jokes. And she said every morning he stops at my grandpa's house early in the morning as he's walking to Arlie to town, and he stops at my grandpa's house every morning for a cup of coffee, and they visit. And then Patsy will say, "All right, Louis, I'm gonna head out." And they're talking in Indian though, but he said, "Who? Eh, he said, "Okay, have a good day." And there goes Patsy. Well, one day Patsy was coming, and Louis had the coffee ready to go. That was their routine. But Patsy didn't stop. He just kept going, walking towards Arlie. And then Louis came in the house, and my grandma and her grandma, my grandma was little at that time, and she said, my grandpa came in. He said, "Oh, Patsy didn't stop. He just kept going." And then my great grandpa's wife, you know, my Louis told, or my Felicity, my great grandma told my grandpa, "Oh, he probably has something to do in Arlie. Maybe he's in a hurry." Oh, okay. Here come the next day. Grandpa Louis had coffee on again. Here comes Patsy. He don't stop. He just keeps going. Grandpa comes back in. "Hey, he didn't stop again, that guy." My great grandma said, "Well, he's probably busy. He might have a lot to do. You don't know, whatever." And pretty soon that whole week went by, and Patsy didn't stop. He just kept going past Louis's house. And here comes Sunday night. Louis walked in the house. My great great grandpa, my grandma's grandpa, who she was raised with, he came in the house, and my grandpa came in the house, and he said, "Hey, tomorrow when that Patsy's walking by," he said, I'm gonna fix him. I'm gonna teach him a lesson." And they didn't really pay much attention to him. Here come that next morning. Here comes Patsy. And Patsy, he was wearing a long coat, kind of like a trench coat. He was wearing a long coat. He always wears, I guess, a long coat. And here comes Patsy walking in the morning, and Louis said, "I sat out on my porch watching him, thinking he might just stop by over here for his cup of coffee." Pretty soon he's walking alongside that fence over there. And right when he thought he was going to turn to come towards the house, he kept going towards Arlie again. Louis said, "All right then." Gee, Louis pulled out his 30-30, you know, rifle, and he aimed it towards Patsy, but he didn't aim it at him. He just aimed it, you know, and he pulled the trigger. He said whole Patsy jumped about 8 feet off the ground, like that. And He said his trench coat, he said he was running so fast his trench coat was just flying in the air. And then my grandma's grandpa yelled at him, "I better see you in the morning for coffee." Here, come that next morning. Here comes Potsy at the front door. You got a hot cup of coffee ready? you know, it's it's stories like that 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 teach us a lot. I mean, nowadays, I don't think anyone would do that nowadays, but you know, the times change as the generations evolve, you know what I mean? And I'm starting to notice that, and this is something that the elders always talked about with me. For instance, when we tell our coyote stories in the wintertime when there's snow on the ground. And the elders always say, don't tell coyote stories when there's no snow on the ground. It's time when the snow melts away in the springtime. And they say when you hear the first thunderstorm, you put away the coyote stories until the next year, till the first snow again the next year. And so that one time I said, well, why do we tell coyote stories? Why do we tell coyote stories only when there's snow on the ground? And my uncle told me, he said, well, the way I see it is long time ago, back in the days of the teepee, they would tell coyote stories in the wintertime because you don't want to leave your lodge unless you don't have to, unless it's for food or whatever. You want to stay in your lodge and you want to stay warm. So then when it's the winter time, we'll bring out our stories, we'll bring out our medicine doings, because those all take place indoors, if that makes sense. And it's time to teach your kids and sit them down. And then come springtime, come summertime, and come fall time, it's time for the work. You're working all year because you're getting ready for those harsh winter months. And in those harsh winter months, we still don't like them to go to waste. We still like to teach you. And that's when they bring out these stories. So there's a lot of stories, guys, a lot of stories. And there's even ghost stories too. And those ones are pretty scary if you ask me. But I just want to pick your guys' brain a little bit too. Um, I'm assuming all of you teach here on the Flathead Indian Reservation, no matter what school it is. Can I ask you a question? And I want you to just kind of answer this in your head, okay? If someone came up to you, like me doing right now, and I asked you, who are the Salish people? Maybe this person says, you teach here on the Flathead Indian Reservation. Who are the Salish people? How would you answer that question? You might know a little bit of history about us. You might not. I don't know. But who are the Salish people? The Salish people are the original people in this area. Like a lot of other tribes, we didn't migrate here or anything from another area, another territory. This was always our home territory where we're at today. Stretched all the way up um, the into Canadian territory, all the way into parts of Wyoming, parts of Idaho, and into Washington. Our territory was big, you know. One of our oldest stories goes is that the Salish tribe was once a massive tribe, and we had to break apart. And the interior Salish, which would be the most interior Salish, would be your Bitterroot Salish, and they would break off going more to the west coast. And they made it all the way to the coast. And that's why if you ever travel to Washington, you're going to see a lot of Coast Salish people. And they have different tribal names, but they refer to themselves as Coast Salish. And when they come over here, they're always like Bitterroot Salish or Kalispel or Pend Oreille. That's the difference. The Kalispel people, they're often referred to as Pend Oreille. No such thing. The original name is Kalispel or Kalispel, and for Salish, it's Sedlish. Okay? You have your upper and lower Kalispel, you have your Bitterroot Salish, you have your Coeur d'Alene, and you have your Spokane. Those specific groups of Salish were closely related. The language only differs a little bit. And who are the Salish? One of our words that we use a lot, and I mentioned at the beginning of this, was skadlich. Skadlich means human being. That word skadlich, when you break it apart and you look at its ending, Skeh is a root word from the word meat. You know, the meat that we eat, the steak or whatever. Sketch, meat. Skedlich. And that lich at the end of skedlich for human being refers to the earth. And so when you say skedlich, which is translated human being, you're really saying meat from the earth. So, you know, there's a lot of history there. And you got to, you know, there's a lot of things that take place there. And that's one thing I begin to look at when I look at the history of our people. Who are the Salish people? What were we like thousands of years ago? What were we like hundreds of years ago? What were we like before non-Indians made contact with us? And we learn a lot through our stories about who our ancestors were. They were brave people. They did so much, you know. Um, and you know, I know times are different nowadays, and you know the world's changing, but um, and things are the way they are, but we're still here. You know, there's there's very few of us here, but we're still here. We still practice who we are. I used to watch the elders growing up, and they would get up and they would talk and they would preach to us. They would say, live on that straight road. They would say, be good people, love your family. Those are the things they would tell us. I remember mom and dad spanking us when we were young. Um, I always remember they had a back scratcher or a ruler or a wooden spoon, but I mainly remember that back scratcher. That's what it was, a back scratcher. It was a wooden one, and my dad would spank me, me and my siblings with that. But every time he would spank us, he would let us cry, he would let us pout, and then he'd come to us and sit by us, and he would say, "This is why you got it. This is why you got corrected." He said, "I love you, and don't ever do that again, because it won't be good for you." And if I messed up, he didn't say, "I'm gonna spank you." He didn't say that. He just did it, you know. And I learned, I learned the hard way. um, so these things are important for us. You know, some things in recent history that really affected the Salish people and most tribes, actually all tribes, was horses, disease, and guns. Those three things really affected our people big time, a lot of it in a negative way. Because when you study history, the mortality rate was very, very low when it came to tribes fighting tribes. Historically, Salish people were great allies with the Kootenai people because our territory kind of overlapped in the north. You know, we're great allies. We were well known for doing buffalo hunts together. When you go on a big buffalo hunt, you know, I mean, those were probably intense back in them days. You didn't have no guns, you had no horses, and you'd come across thousands of head of buffalo on the plains, you know? I mean, I can only imagine what those hunts would have been like. And you hear stories about those, and it's just cool to think about that. And you also think of you know, in the southern part of our territory, there was the Shoshone, which is their territory. And historically, we weren't best friends. We weren't really friends. We were more, if anything, we kind of got into conflict here and there. But we were also known to have good trades with each other every so often. And then to the southwest, you got the Nez Perce, and we're also well known for having good alliance with that tribe as well, and also intermarrying into that tribe quite a bit. So there was a lot. And then as more tribes got pushed westward, such as the Gros Ventre, Assiniboine, Blackfeet, Crow, Cree, our territories became smaller and smaller and smaller, you know. But we have place names and we have stories for all of these original sites. I mean, most of them. And the elders have gave that over the years, and that's what we're so thankful for today, you know. So where you're at, you know, you got Incham Katne, Polson. um that word talks about, you can see the tips of the teepees when you come over the mountain because of the encampment of Upper Kalispel people, you know. You got um Ronan, Otskaet, because of the springs that constantly come up. You got Shchidli, we call Dixon that because it's a well-known favorite hunting spot, you know, for Upper Kalispel and Salish people. All these different things, you know. Um, you got Camas Prairie, Kadlnitwe, Kadlni, because of the abundance of camas in that area, you know. So you have all these different names, you know. You have we were just talking about the place name for Butte, Montana. Over there in Butte, our people call that Sintapke. And Sintapke means shot in the head. And the reason why we call Butte Sintapke is because that area was well known for their waters having large bull trout. Large bull trout. And they say that the Salish people would come along the riverbanks patiently with their bows, and they'd wait till one of those eye, they call it in Salish, would swim up close, and they would fire, and that arrow would go into that fish's head, jump in, you know. And things like that, you know, we don't see no more because it's so different now. um but you know, we talk about those things, and those are things we got to keep passing on. There's so much history, so much history. And there's a lot of different topics we can talk about, you know, from the early reservation period, back in 1980, back in 1981, you know, when the last group of Salish people moved from the Bitterroot. What was that like? You know, do we have stories about that? Yes, we do. We actually had elders that gave us a lot, that were actually teenagers during that time. um, you know, those were some hard times for my people. But even though there was hard times, I always still hear elders and others talk about the good times as well too. You know, playing, having fun, going hunting, you know, going camping, um, all those different things, you know. um, one of the one of the stories that I like is, at one time there was this Indian that lived kind of near Ronan. He kind of lived back, you know, kind of where Job Corps is today. he said, uh, he said, that one day he said, um, um, my wife told me to follow her, or I met my wife in Ronan, and we decided to hop in one car because she was in her car and I was in my old car, and we parked my car at the store. I got in with her, and we headed to Polson to do some shopping. Then we came back and we just came straight through, got home. He said, and that was I think he said that was a Friday. He said, and come Monday, one of my neighbors was knocking at the door, you know, a neighbor that visits him quite a bit. And he said, hey, he said, you're home? He said, yeah, I'm home. He said, your car's not parked out front. He said, what? Here, he looked out there. Someone stole my car. And he went there and he said, hey, honey, he said, someone stole our car. He said, it's gone. And here, they forgot that they left it at that store in Ronan. Kind of came back to them, and they shot to Ronan and got that car, you know. And um, Just little things like that. A lot of our families grew up riding horseback, and my mom and my dad and my grandfolks, and they said when we would ride horseback, they said one of us was always loosening someone's bridle or saddle. And sure enough, they'd say, let's have a little race. They'd get going and they'd be watching whose bridle they loosened. And sure enough, it'd slip, fall off, and there they would go. I said, didn't you ever worried about them getting hurt? I'd say, no. I'd say, we just didn't. And when we were little, we would play on my grandpa's crowels or whatever. And you know what we used to do? And my mom said she used to do this when she was little too, but we used to walk on top of the crowels, and the crowels are 7, 8 feet high, and we would walk on them and play tag. And nowadays, I was thinking, I would never do that. Like I'd like never. You ever think about those things? Like when you're a kid, we always were bare. We never had shoes. It was always bare feet in the summertime. And now you walk. Now you take off your shoes and you walk out on the ground. Oh, you're tender footed. You can't do it no more. You know, um, just things like this. Things like this. Um, I just want to thank you, teachers, so much for all your hard work. Um, Stories are so important to our Indian people. Stories is how we communicate, stories is how the elders express their happiness, their sadness. Um, it's through stories that we learn, but sad to say, it's also a way of life that is being lost as well too, because the world is so fast changing that it's all cell phones or this computer, things like that. And no one sits and visits anymore. So I just want to let this be a reminder to you, and I'll be preaching to you. Take time and tell your kids, your grandkids, or your cousins, or your friends. Take time and tell stories with each other. Visit. Talk about your days. Talk about what got you upset. Talk about what made you happy. Relay those things. Talk about stories that you learned growing up. You know, and continue to learn stories about our Salish, Kalispel, and Kootenai people, and continue to implement those stories into your classroom. Winter time's coming up. Implement as many coyote stories as you can. There's a lot of material out there. Um, yeah. But anyway, I just want to thank you guys so much for, I don't, like I said, if you have any questions, you can email me at vancehomegun.com. Vance Homegun. Yeah, Vance Homegun at gmail.com. And I'll get back to you as fast as I can. Um, I hope you learned something. I just wanted to share what was on my heart, and there's so many stories, and they're a lot of fun. But hey, I appreciate you teachers. You teachers put a lot of work every day into your lessons, and I know you're tired at night and you're looking forward to the summer, but you are making a difference in students' lives. I truly, truly believe that. So get out there, be strong, and I'm praying for you guys, and I love you guys, and have a great day.